New figures today showed house prices are rising at their fastest pace in 12 years as the government comes under renewed pressure to defend its plan to deal with the housing crisis. We looked at this at length after 5 o'clock. Not that Prime Minister John Key or Building and Housing Minister Nick Smith has ever used the word crisis. Instead, government MPs are keen to talk about their comprehensive housing plan, part of which, of course, is last weekend's announcement about the establishment of a $1 billion infrastructure fund to help speed up house building. Interest-free loans are to be offered to councils in 5 high-growth areas in a bid to speed up the supply of housing. Auckland obviously is expected to be the main beneficiary, but does the fund actually help solve the city's problems? And what we've learnt from QV today is that the average house value in Auckland is now $975,000. Deputy Mayor Penny Hulse has led the council's work on housing and joins me now in the studio. Welcome, Penny Hulse. Welcome, Penny. It's nice to have you back on Checkpoint. Let's look at the response and the sense that the buck stops all over the shop. What sort of pressure is the council feeling under now to deal with this? And how much can you deal with it when what QV told us today, for example, is that significantly the rise is still being driven by investors?
You know, John, the buck does stop with the government, with the council and with developers and to a certain extent with Aucklanders. The reality, though, is for someone like me, a mother, a grandmother, someone who lives in West Auckland, my focus is on our people who look at those figures and say, we just can't carry on living in Auckland, and that's what drives, for me, the need to deal with this crisis.
If you're in the housing market and the bubble doesn't burst, you probably like the figures. But if you are not in the housing market, then the figures are just terrifying and you are being left behind. How old are your children? Forgive me, it's a personal question. How old are your children?
It's not personal at all. They're 30 and 28.
And do they own homes?
No, they don't. And that's...
And do they have children?
Yes, my oldest son does. He's got 3 children.
So we are seeing a rise of the number of families in rented accommodations in the city.
And this is the reality of Auckland. And, there's that complete disjointed nature of how you feel as an Aucklander. You look at the value of your own home rising, and of course, I'm nearly 60. It makes me think, well, I'm safe in my old age. And then I break my heart for my son, his partner, and their 3 children. And like many Auckland parents, we're looking at remortgaging to help our kids. That's how Aucklanders are dealing with this, and people around the rest of the country. So we worry about the young people who can't afford to buy, we worry about the lack of rental properties, and at the really sharp end, we worry about people sleeping in their cars. It's not okay, and that's why it's all hands to the pump to fix this.
Okay, all hands to the pump, including $1 billion of the government's infrastructure fund. What difference will that make in Auckland?
So we've struggled with how not to appear ungrateful. So the bottom line is, good on the government for taking seriously its Treasury paper of several months ago, which said the lack of infrastructure is what's holding development back. They've taken that seriously and they've put a decent slug of money in. $1 billion is a lot of money in anyone's language. However, when we look at the reality of Auckland, which is $17 billion to service the infrastructure needs of Auckland over the next 30 years, we need to just manage our excitement about possibly a half or a third of $1 billion.
You're being facetious there. You don't feel any excitement, do you? I mean, you're essentially saying this is window dressing, that this isn't a meaningful response and that this won't make a meaningful difference.
No, I'm not going to agree with that, because let's face it, anything that allows some land that is almost ready for development to come on stream quicker has got to be a good thing. And even a few $100,000, if that can make a difference, we should be grabbing it and working with the government to do that. To be fair, we've been working with them over several months to say what we think would work and what might be acceptable. And we are going through a time where we've reached our debt ceiling, and they've offered to help, and we need to say thank you.
Is it land or is it density? And that's the unitary plan discussion, and I know you are still having that, right?
The unitary plan is going through its process and hopefully will be completed at the end of August.
So much is riding
September.
on this, isn't it? So much is riding on it.
It is.
And how much do you feel the weight of that responsibility? I
feel it on an hourly basis. It is something that is of critical importance to Auckland. It's, I think, possibly one of the biggest pieces of planning that's been done, I have huge faith in Aucklanders that they will see this through and that they will see it through well.
And then you have to have buy-in from the government, and you have to be able to work with the government, and you have to know who in the government you're working with. Are you working with the Prime Minister? Are you working with Nick Smith? Are you working with Paula Bennett? Are you working with Bill English? Is there cohesion from the government as you see it?
Our challenge is that we would love to see a comprehensive plan for housing.
The government uses that word.
they do.
That's a comprehensive plan. In fact, they were using it in their House a lot this afternoon.
We're keen to see it. We'd love to see that.
Okay, so what would it look like?
It would be a coherent plan that brings together Minister Bennett, Minister English and Minister Smith, the three ministries working collaboratively on all issues to do with housing. In that way, we'd know what's expected of us as a council. We wouldn't be dealing with, every now and again, look, Auckland Council's not perfect. We disagree with each other on a daily basis, but at the moment we're getting a little bit lost between different messages from different ministries. It'd be great for the ministries to sit down and agree this, and also, and I know I've said this before, to look at a cross-party agreement. Greens, Labour, National. How about all agreeing a little bit of a slowdown of the politics and a move on with houses?
You're calling for that?
I think it would be. We're starting to see bits of it, and I'd love to see that have its own energy and get some agreement rather than politics.
Because this has to be bigger than politics. Otherwise, either Auckland is going to burst in ways that we can't even begin to contemplate, or an entire generation are never going to own their own home.
This is our children, our grandchildren being able to afford to stay in the Auckland we love.